Yolanda, why are you hiding in here with your cake?
I'm like an artist before a concert. I'm saying my prayer.
And you're gonna roll this cake down the ramp to them.
Warhan, you're not doing too bad. You're not complaining now, are you? Huh?
I'm pretty scared, to be honest with you.
This week I made a cake for the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere, which happened in downtown Toronto. The premiere here in Toronto happened to be on the director's birthday. So Shawn Levy was gonna see this cake that I made. Okay, no pressure. I decided to do the bottom and top tier chocolate with vanilla Italian meringue buttercream, and the middle tier is vanilla with brown sugar buttercream, because I just think those two taste so good together. So I have to properly build these cakes. So I'm gonna build 6 cakes. I did all the usual things, removed the cakes, leveled them, layered them, and then of course I simple syruped all the cakes, let that soak in, and then it's time to build. See how this cake, like the tiers don't look that high. It doesn't give you like grandeur. It's funny how a cake can look big in a picture, but I know from my cake experience it wouldn't have been that tall, and I wanted it to be spectacular. So I decided to double barrel each tier, because you know I love to, what everyone? Torture myself! And if you're new here, double barrel means inside there's 2 cakes and there's a board in the middle with dowels. And this makes the cake easier to cut because you get more reasonable slices, while from the outside it just appears like each tier is really grand. The next step is to put the cakes together so that I only have, whoa, what are we doing? What are you doing in this interview?
Jumped out of frame.
My head jumped out of frame. I need to hydrate. This process is long. So this is where I cut dowels to the exact height of the cake, press them in, carefully put the other cake on top. And remember, these cakes are the same size, so the cake is becoming twice as high. And then I'm going to ice this cake as 1, and I did this for all 3 tiers. At this point, you know how high each cake was? Why don't you guess? These were 7.25 inches high, okay? And you know how much I love 777. This is my thing. So it was like 777. I'm just whizzing through this part of the process because I still have so much work to do on this cake. But if you want to learn more about how to build a cake, how to fill and stack all the basics, then there's a cake decorating masterclass on howtocakeit.com. So go check it out. Now we're going to get to the good stuff. Covering a double barrel is really hard. It takes quite a lot of fondant. Because the cake is so high, the weight wants to pull itself down. But as you can see, each cake is covered in halves. So this is actually gonna make my life easier in one regard, but I have to roll out a whole lot of fondant. I decided to start with the darker fondant, the black. All 3 cakes have a half black side. If I start with the color, let's say I start with the yellow and then I roll the black and it overlaps the yellow, the black will stain the yellow. Whereas black is the darkest color, so the yellow and red laid over top isn't going to stain the black. So this is, nothing will stain black. So I had to roll out a lot of fondant. I got on my baby stool. This is literally my baby's stool, who's not a baby anymore. When I get taller in the video, you can thank this here baby stool that my son used to stand on to wash his hands and brush his teeth. And now mommy uses it so that she can cover fondant cakes. So, you know, this is something people don't talk a lot about, but when fondant is colored, especially a very dark color, it tends to tear more. It tends to tear more than white fondant. And the tears are also far more noticeable because of the color. Don't worry, you know I'm the seam hider. You know that that's my... Why didn't they put me in the Deadpool movie?
Oh, it's actually really nice now.
I know. Have you seen her spatulas? They're amazing.
Oh, there seems to be some seams on this page.
I see a seam down there. You're joking.
All those cameos and I wasn't in it?
Well, there was one cameo that I was very happy about.
Oh boy, are we even allowed to talk about
You know, I
this?
can't spoil it.
We can't, but Orhan became thrilled in the
I
theater.
was jumping up on my seat.
He really was, he was giddy. No, he was very happy. Job well done, Disney. Oh yes, okay, so cakes are covered. Let's move on to the details because there are a lot of them. So I don't even know where to start. I'm just gonna go little by little. How about that? As a bottom border on each cake, there is a chain. First of all, I had a really hard time finding a chain mold. And then I rolled out white gum paste into tubes, pressed it into the mold, rolled over it with my silicone rolling pin, trimmed away the excess, and then you carefully pull it out of the mold. There's a lot of chain molds that look like necklaces, that kind of chain, but that's not the chain I was going for. for. I was going for like an industrial chain. There was also 3 claws, Wolverine claws. So what I did is I cut out some foam board as the base, because if I just make this out of gum paste at this size and thickness, it would have never dried unless I made them 2 months ago, especially in the humidity.
They were pretty much life size.
They were, I loved that about them. I also have to build a blade for Deadpool. Wolverine has claws, Deadpool has a blade. It's only fair. But I had to do this in stages because obviously the handle of a blade is heavier. And then there's this round thing. You know the round thing on blades, right? I don't know what it's called. Then I made the blade. My one regret about the sword is I wish I had left more dowel on the end, but I was afraid because there wasn't much room on the top of the bottom tier. So if I had a really long dowel and I shoved that blade in, there's a chance it could poke out the cake because it's so close to the edge. Now there's also the words best friends on the cake, and the AI drew those words as if they were scripted, almost like a printed script. It's quite thick, it's quite bold. This meant that I had to sort of hand make every letter. I couldn't use, the stencils I normally use. I used black modeling chocolate. It's just a bit easier to model. When you let modeling chocolate set, it does firm up quite a bit. I also had to write the birthday message, happy birthday, Shawn. For that, I used black gum paste, rolled it out, and I did use just some of my letter cutters that I had. Our boardroom table was just cake boards with like blades and letters and a hilt and a rain guard and claws, and it's not in this drawing, but I added the cartoon faces of Deadpool and Wolverine. I rolled out some white gum paste nice and thin and then cut out the base shape of each face. Then I let that dry for a few days. After that was dry, I painted them. Then I rolled out some black gum paste really thin and I cut out Wolverine's, what do you call these? Wings? Remember what he called them in the movie? Oh. When everything was dry, I went back with a black food coloring marker and outlined the edges, because these are supposed to look like cartoon drawings. They're supposed to resemble the comic book, exactly. Oh, we're not talking about something huge. We haven't talked about Dogpool yet. I had to sculpt Dogpool. It's an interesting looking dog. Modeling chocolate was the perfect color. I also used styrofoam balls inside her body and her head, which you can't see, but it added extra support because, again, it's summer. Nobody ever believes Toronto has summer. The styrofoam inside is gonna help to support it, so as it's drying, it's not just gonna droop down. Let's talk about her outfit. She has a whole Deadpool outfit on, so I had to let the body dry, go back, cover it in red, add the black elements, add her Deadpool collar. She has some interesting hair. I could never roll gum paste that thin to resemble hair. It would have been very heavy on top. So for this, I use stamens, which are something that are made for people who make sugar flowers. You know when you open a flower, there's inside those little stamens. Okay, now we need to talk about the best friend charms that are on the top of the cake. You know what's funny? I actually had a necklace like this with my best friend when I was 12. For this, again, I used my black foam board, cutting out the base shape of each side, and this is for added support. And then I had to cover each piece with the correct color. Then I needed to let them dry. I covered back and front.
I think we can stop saying I needed to let them dry.
I need to let you guys know how long this took. Then I needed to add the black parts, the white part of the eye, and for the silver, I rolled out some gray, I cut strips, and then I glued them on, and it kind of outlines all the other colors. Let's talk about it. When everything was dry, I had to go in with a lot of silver paint. And that includes the base board I'm gonna put the cake on. And now I'm gonna do all the silver painting. Okay, so now I'm gonna take several deep breaths. It's time to assemble this cake. So we're here, guys. We're at the last day of the process. This is when I get the cake ready to deliver downtown. Two things. This is when you've created all these pieces and they're gonna come together. So I actually love this part of the process because this is when I can see the vision. However, it's also the part of the process where things can go wrong and you can essentially ruin your work. This is the climax, okay? If this was Deadpool and Wolverine, we're at the climax now. because
Right before they do the thing with the other thing?
with the other thing, yeah. I have to assemble this cake, okay? And then there was one more detail that was sort of hard for me to do. It's always hard for me to intentionally ruin fondant. But obviously Wolverine has claws, so we needed some claw marks. And I used a sculpting tool and I just pulled it through the fondant, and I was really happy with how it looked. It was really cool. It looked like Wolverine scratched the surface of the cake. Now I need to add this silver, like these silver blocks or chunks. I don't know what to call them. And of course I wanted to make it look as if it was like emerging from the cake. So first I cut a little bit of fondant off the cake where the two colors met right in the center. And then I added the strip. I added more detail to the strip with my tools. And then I did this twice more on the second tier and top tier. Not only was this a big event and a big deal, but when I got there, I found out I was presenting it to them in front of the whole audience.
Are you late, Yolanda?
No, I'm right on time. Don't do that.
So that same audience, Orhan, that we walked by, dressed like Deadpool and dressed like Wolverine, I had to roll my cake out to some very famous people in front of an entire audience who like just wants to watch the movie. Hugh Jackman comes over to me and says, "Did you make, that's absolutely beautiful. Did you make that?" Orhan, I couldn't even register what was happening. But here's the best part. I was so nervous and shaky, I couldn't light the candles because I couldn't click the barbecue light. Happy birthday to Shawn. And I'm like, look. And finally, a gentleman who works for Disney came over and helped me light it. And it was just so, it was so exciting, but it was so much adrenaline. We got to enjoy the movie, and it was like really entertaining, really funny, action-packed. And only then did I like start to relax. But this was like a fun-filled week.